Welcome back. Bravery and leadership are two qualities that most of us would have a very hard time defining. Rather odd, since they're qualities that most of us really admire. You're about to meet a Canadian who's shown both qualities under extreme circumstances and at significant risk to himself. For retired Sergeant Tom Hoppe, leadership is forged from the actions of individuals, the strain sculpted in the faces of Canadian heroes, his predecessors. On a visit to the nation's capital as head of the Canadian Peacekeeping Veterans Association, Hoppe shares his lessons from the front line.
It's important for members of Parliament to understand the military or veterans issues because they are the ones who put us overseas. They're the ones who also put the legislation in place to look after the soldier once he leaves the military and he's served his country.
For 20 years, Hoppe served his country, at home and overseas, with distinction. In the 1990s, Hoppe was a member of the Canadian contingent of 1,500 representing the United Nations. The job? Enforcing the peace among Croats, Serbs, and Bosnian Muslims, while Yugoslavia crumbled. They were to keep the peace when there was no peace to keep. The Canadians were ill-equipped, only lightly armed, with little ammunition. Back home, most Canadians were unaware.
Peacekeeping is war. Otherwise you wouldn't need peacekeepers there. This is what happened in the early 90s, and I believe the members of Parliament at that time, as well as the Canadian public, were not aware of what was happening over there at that time.
Here's how Hoppe and his brothers-in-arms described the situation for the iChannel documentary series, A Question of Honor.
We got moved to just the edge of Visoko into a parking lot. We built a big observation post with walls.
It didn't prevent things, though, like someone on one side or the other taking a few shots, or a number of shots in this case, at innocent civilians just as sport.
Our job there was to observe the hillside, again, because of our optics that we had, do situation reports, and I was just finishing off at the gate. And we always were getting rounds coming over the observation post, but they were fairly high, but these ones sounded closer, and I stuck my head around the corner, and across the street we had a cemetery.
Some children were walking along the road and started playing in between cemetery stones, and Sergeant Hoppe and his crew had noticed the perilous position that these children were in.
You could see the rounds kicking up. So I radioed it in. They had said that, wait, we're assessing the situation. There's no time to wait, just no time.
He got one armored vehicle, never took the time to get it himself, deployed it across the road, literally running as the bullets were following him and the children. Got them loaded safely into the back of an armored carrier and a safe distance back towards their town. There's no question he saved the lives of the three of them.
He saw civilians being threatened, killed, and decided to do something about it. He did something. So very deserving, very self-effacing, very quiet individual, actually.
For his heroism during that single tour of duty, Hoppe was awarded two of this country's highest honors, medals not handed out together since the Korean War.
This one here is the Meritorious Service Cross. I got that for leadership. This is a Medal of Bravery for the rescuing the kids, and the other medals are just tour medals and service medals. These two are very important because without the efforts of my patrol, there's no way I could have achieved the tasks.
We had horrendously valiant, honorable, brave undertakings in peace operations in the past that just were not recognized.
If he was in the United States, he would have had a ticker tape parade all the way to Parliament. All the way to the White House, and he would have met the president, and he probably would have gotten the Congressional Medal of Honor, and he would, a movie of the week would probably be about him. Yet he lives here in Canada, lives a day-to-day life, and nobody even gives a shit. Nobody's ever told him officially, you did a great job.
Canadians are generally uncomfortable, I think, with military, quote, heroes, unquote.
Canadians died in Yugoslavia. There's a bloody monument there with names of dead Canadian soldiers on it. And we're doing this because the Canadian people and our politicians believe that it's the right thing. Well, if it's the right thing, then how come when we come back home, nobody says, good job?
I think that would be due to a lack of, thank God, a lack of experience with war here in Canada, and that our battlefields tend to be now removed by time and much more distant.
A volunteer fireman back home, Hoppe has made the transition to civilian life by working out, sailing and flying during his free time. And now, there is his book on leadership, From the View of a Sergeant. On the ground, sleeves rolled up, in the middle of the action.
And these guys...
For Hoppe, understanding and respect will only come through education. That's why he visits high schools, to share his experiences with students.
And I talked to the schools and that, and they're surprised. They didn't realize it was that bad. Canadians truly don't understand what peacekeeping's about, or the myth of peacekeeping, especially our politicians. And that's no fault of their own, because they come from the communities that everybody else comes from, so they have the same amount of knowledge. And that we really, if we're going to send troops overseas, we got to support them with equipment, and we got to support them with, with support from the nation to do the job. That's part of the thing.
Educating the public doesn't stop at the schools. It continues during Hoppe's visits with our elected leaders.